A mother's last Instagram post was a note to her son telling him he could start the week strong. She never saw him again because of what happened next on State Street. She was held in a headlock while the other woman got a gun. Then came the shot that killed her and the legal decision that stunned everyone. What you just heard in that intro is only the beginning of one of the most controversial shooting cases in recent Chicago history. I'm bringing you this story here on 10 by 10 Confidential, where we dig deep into the cases that challenge our understanding of justice, self-defense, and the law. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this community. If you're finding value in these detailed investigations, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you get notified the moment we drop our next video. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps us demand accountability where the system falls short. Now let's get into exactly what happened that Monday morning in September when a devoted mother's routine school drop-off turned into a fatal confrontation that left her family devastated and a community demanding answers. In September of 2024, a routine Monday morning in Chicago's South Loop ended with a fatal shooting that exposed the complicated intersection of self-defense law, legal gun ownership, and a family's search for justice. A devoted mother wrote her son a loving note, dropped him at school, and was deceased within the hour, shot during a street confrontation. The woman who fired the weapon was arrested immediately, but released within 48 hours without criminal charges. The case raises questions about when deadly force is justified, who the legal system protects, and what happens when the courts determine a homicide was lawful. This is the story of that morning and the legal decision that followed. Rebecca Meeks Blackman was 31 years old in September of 2024. She lived in Chicago and was raising her young son while pursuing a nursing degree. Those who knew her described a woman devoted to her child. Friends and family called her Big Meeks. Her mother, Tina McMiller, watched her daughter balance single motherhood and education. Beneath the surface, there were complications in Romeka's personal life. She had a connection to a man named Carlos. Investigators would learn that Carlos also had a connection to another woman named Holly Johnson. The three individuals formed a triangle of relationships that carried tension. Social media posts hinted at conflict between the two women, though the full details remain known only to those involved. Chicago's South Loop neighborhood is a busy urban area. The intersection of State Street and Cermak Road sees constant activity during morning hours. The 2,200 block of South State Street is monitored by surveillance systems, traffic cameras, business security cameras, and residential cameras that would become crucial to the investigation. On September 8, 2024, multiple lives were converging toward that intersection. None of them knew that before mid-morning, one would be deceased, another would be in custody claiming self-defense, and the third would be questioned about his role. Monday morning, September 8th, began with maternal devotion. Romeka prepared her son's lunch and included a handwritten note of encouragement. The note read, "Happy Monday, son. Today is a fresh start to this, and you can start off strong. Always remain yourself. You're the coolest, smartest, and funniest kid I know. I love you so much, and you make me so proud. Have a great day. Mommy loves you, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, love, mommy." She photographed the note and posted it to Instagram. Within hours, that note would become evidence of her final morning. Romeka drove her son to school near Cermak Road and State Street, arriving between 8:45 and 9 o'clock. He gathered his belongings and walked to the entrance. She watched him enter the building. It was routine, except that it would be the last time he saw his mother alive. After drop-off, Romeka remained in the South Loop area. The reason remains unclear. At approximately 9:05 in the morning, she was on foot in the 2,200 block of South State Street, blocks from her son's school. Holly Johnson was also on South State Street at that moment. The two women knew each other through Carlos. When they came face-to-face that morning with witnesses present, a confrontation began immediately. Witnesses observed the two women arguing on the sidewalk, their body language aggressive, voices raised. Passers-by noticed, but were not yet alarmed enough to intervene. The argument escalated quickly. The confrontation became physical. Romeka and Holly began fighting in the street as morning commuters stopped to watch. The specific words exchanged were never recorded. No witness could recall what triggered the physical altercation. Some speculated it concerned Carlos. Others suggested it was the culmination of building tension. Multiple witnesses reported to Chicago police that a man arrived during the fight. Carlos appeared on South State Street. How he knew to be there remains unanswered. According to witness statements, Carlos did not separate the women. Instead, witnesses reported he approached Romeka from behind and restrained her. Witnesses stated he placed her in a hold while she struggled. Romeka was being restrained by Carlos while Holly stood in front of her. Holly then broke away and ran toward a vehicle parked on the street. Witnesses watched as she opened the car door and leaned inside. When Holly emerged, she was holding a firearm. She ran back toward where Carlos held Romeka. Commuters who had been watching realized the situation had become dangerous. Some ducked behind vehicles. Others pulled out phones to call 911 or record video. Holly raised the firearm and pointed it at Romeka's face at close range. Witnesses provided varying accounts about what was said in the seconds before. The tone was unmistakable. Anger, fear, desperation. Holly pulled the trigger. The discharge echoed off buildings. The round struck Romeka directly, causing catastrophic injury. Romeka collapsed. Carlos released his hold. Blood pooled on the sidewalk. The entire confrontation, from argument to shooting, lasted less than 5 minutes. Witnesses stood in shock. Some screamed. Others fled. A few remained, calling 911 while others recorded video. Holly stood near Romeka's body, still holding the firearm. According to witnesses and video that later circulated on social media, Holly made a statement. "I'm licensed to carry." Carlos remained at the scene. He did not flee. He did not render aid. He stood near the body. The first 911 call reached Chicago police at 9:06, approximately 1 minute after the shooting. The caller reported a woman shot in the face on South State Street in the 2200 block near Kermack Road. Additional calls flooded dispatch within seconds. Multiple witnesses were calling simultaneously, reporting the same facts. A fight between two women, a firearm, a shooting, a woman down bleeding. Chicago police officers from the 1st District were patrolling nearby. The first squad car arrived within 3 minutes. Officers called for paramedics and backup. They found Romeka on the ground, unconscious, bleeding heavily from the gunshot wound. She was breathing shallowly, but her condition was critical. Holly Johnson was standing approximately 10 feet away, the firearm at her side. She did not resist when officers approached. She placed the weapon down when ordered and allowed herself to be handcuffed without incident. Carlos was detained for questioning. He was not handcuffed initially, but instructed to remain. Chicago Fire Department paramedics arrived at 9:11. They began emergency treatment. The wound was severe, and they recognized her chances were minimal. Nevertheless, they worked to stabilize her for transport. An ambulance was called. Paramedics placed Romeka on a stretcher and loaded her into the vehicle. The ambulance departed for Stroger Hospital with sirens and lights activated. Police established a perimeter with crime scene tape, blocking off South State Street. Traffic was redirected. Dozens of onlookers gathered, some recording video. Detectives from Area 3 Detective Division were notified. Homicide investigators were dispatched to the scene and to Stroger Hospital. Evidence technicians documented and collected evidence. They photographed the blood. They collected the shell casing. They measured distances and angles. They requested surveillance footage from businesses and traffic cameras. Holly was placed in a squad car for transport to Area 3 headquarters for questioning. The firearm was bagged as evidence. Carlos was also transported for questioning, classified as a witness. Investigators wanted his statement about what occurred and his role in restraining Romeka. Witness statements were collected systematically. Officers documented names and contact information. Several witnesses provided cell phone video. At 9:32, less than 30 minutes after the shooting, Romeka arrived at Stroger Hospital's trauma bay. Doctors and nurses began aggressive life-saving efforts, but the damage was too severe. The round had destroyed vital brain tissue. Despite their efforts, there was nothing they could do. At approximately 10:15 that morning, Romeka Meeks Blackman was pronounced deceased at Stroger Hospital. She was 31 years old. Her son was in class blocks away, unaware his mother was gone. The note she had written was still in his lunchbox, unread. The investigation moved forward quickly. Holly sat in an interview room at Area 3, waiting to give her statement. She had been read her Miranda rights. She declined legal representation. She appeared cooperative and calm. When detectives interviewed her, Holly told them her version without hesitation. She admitted she had shot Romeka. She did not deny pulling the trigger, but she stated clearly she had acted in lawful self-defense under Illinois statute. According to Holly's account, Romeka had attacked her on South State Street. The argument escalated when Romeka became aggressive. Holly stated she feared for her safety. She ran to her vehicle to retrieve her legally owned firearm for protection. She returned to defend herself. When Romeka continued to pose a threat, Holly fired. Detectives pressed her on details. Why go to her vehicle for a firearm instead of driving away? Why return to the confrontation after escaping? If she feared for her life, why not call police and leave? Holly maintained Romeka had been the aggressor. She stated she believed Romeka intended to cause serious bodily harm. Under Illinois law, she asserted, she had the right to defend herself. Detectives then interviewed Carlos separately. His statement would be critical in determining whether Holly's claim had merit. Carlos told investigators he arrived during the fight. He stated he attempted to stop the violence by restraining Romeka. He admitted placing her in a hold to prevent her from continuing to attack Holly. He characterized his actions as de-escalation, not facilitation of shooting. When asked if Holly had been in danger, Carlos answered yes. He claimed Romeka had been the aggressor. He stated he feared Romeka would seriously injure Holly if he did not intervene. Detectives noted Carlos's statement aligned closely with Holly's version, perhaps too closely. They questioned whether they had coordinated. Witness statements presented a complicated picture. Some witnesses said Romeka threw the first punch. Others said Holly initiated contact. Several confirmed Carlos restrained Romeka from behind. A few reported hearing Holly yell threats before running to her car, though exact words were disputed. The surveillance footage would be crucial. Detectives requested video from every camera in the area. The South Loop had extensive coverage. By early afternoon, investigators had footage from 4 different sources. They reviewed it frame by frame in the video analysis room. The footage showed Romeka and Holly arguing on the sidewalk. The video captured when the argument became physical. Both women could be seen grabbing each other and fighting. Within seconds, Carlos appeared in frame, approaching from behind. He came up behind Romeka and placed his arms around her, pulling her into a hold that immobilized her. Holly broke away and ran to a vehicle. The video showed her opening the door, reaching inside, and retrieving what appeared to be a handgun. She ran back toward Romeka, who remained restrained by Carlos. The shooting itself was partially obscured by parked vehicles. However, the muzzle flash was visible. Romeka's body was shown falling immediately after. Detectives reviewed the footage extensively, analyzing who initiated contact and whether Romeka posed an imminent threat when Holly fired. The video showed both women engaged in mutual combat. It confirmed Carlos restrained Romeka. Critically, it showed Holly left the area to retrieve a weapon before returning to fire. Detective personnel ran background checks. Holly had no criminal record, no history of violence, no warrants. Her Illinois firearm owner's identification card was valid. Her concealed carry license was current. The weapon was legally registered in her name. Romeka's background similarly revealed no violent history, minor traffic violations, but nothing suggesting propensity for violence. Investigators attempted to establish motive. They reviewed social media accounts. They found posts hinting at conflict involving Carlos. The communications suggested complicated relationship dynamics. However, the specific reason for the September 8th confrontation remained unclear. No text messages or calls between the women that morning were found. There was no evidence of a planned meeting. The encounter appeared coincidental or possibly arranged through Carlos, though no evidence supported the latter. By late afternoon, Detective Sergeant Marcus Williams compiled preliminary findings into a case summary. He had witness statements, video footage, forensic evidence, and interviews. He prepared the file for presentation to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. The decision whether to charge Holly would not be made by police. That authority rested with prosecutors. On Tuesday, September 9th, representatives from the state's attorney's office reviewed the file. They watched surveillance footage. They read witness statements. They examined Illinois statutes on self-defense and justifiable use of deadly force. The legal standard under Illinois law, specifically 720 Illinois, compiled statutes 5/7-1, states a person is justified in using deadly force when they reasonably believe such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. The critical question: would a reasonable person in Holly's position have believed deadly force was necessary under the circumstances? After deliberation and legal analysis, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office reached their decision. On Wednesday, September 10th, Holly Johnson was released from custody. No criminal charges were filed in connection with Romeka's death. The state's attorney determined the evidence supported Holly's claim of lawful self-defense under Illinois statute. Carlos was similarly released. No charges were filed for his role in restraining Romeka. The case would remain classified as open investigation, but no prosecution would be pursued absent new evidence. For Romeka's family, the decision was devastating. The case exposes tensions in how American society balances Second Amendment rights, self-defense protections, and accountability for taking human life. Holly Johnson exercised rights granted under Illinois law and the Constitution. She legally owned a firearm. She obtained required permits. When she felt threatened, she retrieved her weapon and used it, exactly as gun rights advocates argue is the purpose of legal gun ownership for self-defense. Yet a mother is deceased, a child is growing up without her, a family is devastated and feels abandoned by a justice system that declined to present the case to a jury. The lunchbox note, "You're the coolest, smartest, and funniest kid I know. I love you so much," has been shared hundreds of thousands of times on social media. It serves as a reminder of maternal love cut short and a legal framework that determined no crime occurred. Romeka's mother, Tina McMiller, continues to demand justice while raising a traumatized grandson who has emotionally withdrawn since his mother's death. She has become an advocate for gun violence prevention and legal reform. The case remains technically open. The questions it raises about self-defense law, legal gun ownership, and prosecutorial discretion continue to generate debate. But for one little boy, the questions are simpler. Why isn't his mother coming home? And why did no one face consequences? This has been the case of Romeka Meeks Blackman, a mother's final mourning, a fatal confrontation, and a family's search for justice in a legal system that determined deadly force was justified. And that's where the Romeka Meeks case stands today. A mother is gone, a child is growing up without her, and the woman who pulled the trigger never faced a jury. The legal system called it self-defense, but Romeka's family calls it something very different. Thank you so much for watching this investigation here on 10 by 10 Confidential. If this story moved you, frustrated you, or made you think differently about self-defense laws, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into cases that demand attention. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear Romeka's story and understand what happened that September morning. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Based on the evidence presented, do you believe Holly Johnson acted in legitimate self-defense, or should she have been charged with murder? Does the fact that she left to retrieve a gun and return to the scene change your view of whether the threat was truly imminent? Drop your thoughts below. Let's have a real conversation about where the line is between self-defense and homicide. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation. The events depicted in this video are based on publicly available court records, news reports, and legal documents. All individuals are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This content is presented for educational and informational purposes only.